Continue now at the top of Daf Yodalit and Bezim Mesechet Kesubos. This is Kesubos Daf 14b. The Brisa here continues with Rabbi Meir's opinion. Rabbi Meir says, Shamati, I heard, Kol she'ein ba echad mikol elu. If somebody doesn't have any of these sveikas, masiyan lekahuna, then they are allowed to marry a kohen. Now Rashi over here points out, Shamati lekamei parach. The Gemara is going to ask, Hainu Tanakama. That is identical to what the Tanakama, the Brisa, just said on the previous Amud. The Tanakama nami hachi amar. That's what the Tanakama said. The mishum de'ein ba echad mikol elu, because they don't have any of these psulim. And again, the Tanakama said, if you have a psul of mamzer, etc., none of those would be good. The only kind of suffix that's okay is cholol. Heidu alel hachsher. That's what the Tanakama said, that it's kosher. That seems to be exactly what Rabbi Meir is saying. And then the Brisa continues, Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar Omer Mishum Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, he says in the name of Rabbi Meir, meaning we have another opinion of what Rabbi Meir says. V'chein haya Rabbi Shimon ben Manasseh Omer Kedvarav, and similarly Rabbi Shimon ben Manasseh says like him. Eizu hi almanas Isa. What is considered the almanas Isa? Again, that's the widow of a person who had relations with somebody who's a suffix. Kol shenitma ba suffix cholol. Anybody who, again, they had relations with somebody who was a suffix cholol. And then he ends off here, Makirin Yisrael Mamzerim Shebeinehem. The Jewish people, they recognize, they can identify who are the Mamzerim among them. Ve'in Makirin Chalolin Shebeinehem, but they cannot identify the Chalolin among them, which seems to be saying that according to Rabbi Meir, Chalol is actually going to be stricter. A Suffolk Chalol situation is going to be stricter than a Suffolk Mamzer situation. Rashi says, Makirin Yisrael Mamzerim Shebeinehem, a Suffolk Mamzer Yeshlach Lahachshir. You have a Suffolk Mamzer, you should say it's kosher. The Mamzer haven't made the Havayadi, because if he really was a Mamzer, they would have known about it. Vein makir and chalolin shebeneyan, but they don't recognize the chalolin. V'safich chalol yeshlach lifsol. So according to this version of Rabbi Meir, safich chalol should be possible. Well, the kamei parach. Now the Gemara will ask ha'amrit reisha. In the beginning of the statement, you say ezui almonas isa kol shenitma ba safich chalol. Anytime you have a situation of a safich chalol, alma safich chalol ksher. Now by saying ezui almonas isa was the one that was kosher before. So it sounds like therefore safich chalol actually should be kosher. And yet at the end of the statement, it sounds like it's saying that the Safich Cholol is going to be possible. All of these questions will be addressed in terms of how to understand this Brisa. And the Gemara now analyzes the Brisa. Amar Mar, the master said, again quoting the Brisa we just mentioned above, Ezui Almonas Isa. What's considered Almonas Isa? This was the Tanakam of the Brisa. Kol she'ein bo lo misham mamzerus, v'lo misham nesinos, v'lo misham avdei melachim. If you don't have mixed into it the psul of mamzer, nesin, avdei melachim, any of those things, it's then going to be okay. And we make a diak, ha-chalol kosher. But apparently cholol, that's not among them. That would be kosher, as Rashi says, ha-cholol kosher, misham safich cholol, lo pasula. Apparently there's no disqualification if it's a safich cholol. That's what it's saying over here in this Brisa. And so the Gemara first asks, Ma'ishna hanach doraisa, cholol nami doraisa. What's the difference between these other ones you said that are problematic and cholol is not problematic? They're all doraisa. Those are doraisa and cholol is also doraisa. So why is it that we're making a distinction? Rashi says, Ma'ishna hanach de pasal lo safik de tu doraisa mishum devadon poslim in Torah bebia. Because if you had a vadai situation of those individuals, mamzer, etc., then it would disqualify on a doraisa level with relations. The nafkol and biavamas mechisiel ishzar kevin shenival la pasal la pasla. When she has relations with somebody who is puzzled her, she is disqualified. Cholol nami vaday pasal midoraisa. Cholol also certainly pasals midoraisa. The alfinan lo hasam miloichal zaro makar zaro lo mahu posel bebiaso av zaro posel v'hu gufei nafkol and miloichalo shnei chilun v'mashma echad zaro v'echad ishto. The psul is going to mess up the woman and the children, and also those children are going to continue that. And if you have relations with those children, also it's going to be that's exactly the case of cholol, and it pasals bebiaso. So again, they're all deoraisa. So what's the difference? And the Gemara continues to analyze the Brisa. V'su. Furthermore, let's take a look at the next line of the Brisa. Amar Rabbi Meir says, Shamati, I heard, Kol she'ein bo echad mikol elu masin lakun. If you don't have any of these psulim, meaning again, mamzer, nesin, etc., so then it's going to be okay to marry kahuna. And so the Gemara asks, Sainu Tanakama. That's identical to the Tanakama. It's saying that a Safik Cholol situation is the almona of a Safik Cholol situation is going to be okay. And finally, the Gemara asks, V'su, and furthermore, take a look at the last opinion in the Brisa. Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, Omer Mishum Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar says in the name of Rabbi Meir, V'chein haya Rabbi Shimon ben Manasseh, Omer Kedvarav, and similarly Rabbi Shimon ben Manasseh says like him, Ezui almonas Isa. What is almonas Isa? Kol shenitma ba Safik Cholol, any case of Safik Cholol. Makir and Yisrael mamzerim shebeinei and makir and chalol shebeinei. The Jews, they recognize when there's a mamzer among them. They don't recognize when there's a cholol among them. So the Gemara asks, V'amrit reisha cholol kosher. You just said in the beginning cholol is kosher, and now you're saying at the end you don't recognize the chalolim as if that's going to be possible. So how do you understand that? that. Rashi over here says, Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, Seva de Milsa Aresha de Milsa Parach. The way Rashi understands this question, it's actually the end of his words on the beginning of his words. The Gatani Seifa in Makir Chalol and Shabenem, because it says at the end we don't recognize the Chalol in Mashma. Efshar Shaya Chol. It sounds like he is a Chol. It could be a problem. Avaloya Makir, but we don't realize it. Alma Islay the puzzle. You see that it's puzzle. Vereja Amar Izui Almonas Isa. It said in the beginning you say what's considered Almonas Isa. That was the beginning of the statement over there. Vehichshar Kol Shenitma Basav Chol. Sounds like you're saying it's kosher when you have a Safek Chol situation. And so therefore, again, that's the Gemara's question over here. V'amrit Reisha Chol kosher. You said in the Reisha that Chol was kosher, and so therefore you have this contradiction even within Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. How do we understand Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar? And the Gemara now attempts to resolve this entire brisa. Amar Rabbi Yochanan says, Mamzer tzaveach v'cholol shosek ika beinai. The difference between these tanoim is, let's say you have a case of a mamzer who's being accused of being a mamzer, and tzaveach means he protests against it. He says, I'm really not a mamzer. Or you can also have a case of a cholol who is quiet, who doesn't say anything. Rashi says, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Mamzer tzavach v'cholol shosek ika beinayu. Adam kashekarnos o mamzer. The first case is, let's say you have a person who, when you call him a mamzer, hu tzavech, he screams and he protests. Ushekarnos o cholol shosek. When you call him a cholol, he's quiet. So ika bein Rabbi Meir the Tanakama. That's the difference between Rabbi Meir and the Tanakama. Uvein Tanakama debraisa aliva de Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar aliva de Rabbi Meir. Also, that's the difference between, again, we had two opinions within Rabbi Meir. The first opinion according to Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar according to Rabbi Meir. The difference is, again, these cases, and the Gemara now elaborates. Again, ika beinayu, that's the difference. Tanakama, some of the Tanakama holds. Kol pasel dekaru le v'shasik pasel. Tanakama is a simple opinion across the board. Anytime you say that somebody's disqualified, you tell him he has a certain psul, and he's quiet, it's as if he's admitting that he has that psul, and that creates a disqualification. V'hachi kamar Tanakama, and here's how you read the Tanakama. Ezui almonas isa, what's almonas isa? Kol she'ein bo lo shetuk mamzerus, v'lo shtuk nesinas, v'lo shtuk avdei melachim, v'lo shtuk cholol. Any case, what's considered almonas isa? You cannot have silence in the face of the accusation. Meaning to say, anytime there's silence in the face of the accusation, and it doesn't matter if it's chol or mamzer, it's all the same, all of those cases are going to be problematic. It's going to create a disqualification. Rashi over here says, Tanakama savar kol psul dekaru le v'shasik pasel. If you call him that, and he's quiet about it, he is automatically disqualified. Dahodohi, because that is an admission. V'chol she'ein bo lo misham mamzeros dekamar ashtikos kai. We're really going on the fact that the guy is silent. That's the key to understanding Tanakama. V'achi kamar ezui almonas isa lahachshir. And so we're saying, what is considered almonas isa where it's okay? Kol she'ein bo lo shtuk mamzerus v'lo shtuk nesina. It has to have none of these things, no silence. But kevon the talatayma b'shtika. And once you're saying the real proof over here that there's a disqualification is that the guy was quiet, who adin l'chol shtuke psul. The same is true by anyone who's silent in the face of the accusation of psul. V'lo hutzrach limno says kulam. We don't need to go through all of them. That's the pshat in the Tanakama. Uve'ezu hechshiro be'esha safechol sha'anu makirin esveiko. Now, in which case do we say it's kosher? That would be the wife of a safech where we recognize the suffix. Shenizgar she'imo safek. We know that his mother was divorced in a safek situation. Aval misha ein makirin bo. But if you have someone we don't know anything about him, v'shamanu shaposlano so v'shosek, and we heard that he's disqualified and he's silent, puzzle. That's what the Tanakama says. Again, the Tanakama says in all of these cases of shtuk mamzer, shtuk nesina, shtuk avdei malachim, shtuk cholol, is all going to be puzzle. Now we move on to Rabbi Meir, the first version of Rabbi Meir. The Kamer le Rabbi Meir. So now Rabbi Meir responds, Hanachu de kapasel le bekal. It's true of those things where the psul is something where the person is not allowed to enter the community. Let's say, for example, mamzerus, nesinus. Those things, if you're going to call him that and he doesn't say anything, that's an admission of guilt. Avol shtuk cholol, however, if you have a situation where you call someone a cholol and he's silent, that already Rabbi Meir says is more lenient. Kosher, in that case, it's kosher. The only reason the person is silent is because he doesn't really care. It's not such a big deal to be a cholol, so there's nothing to protest about. As Rashi over here says, the Kamer le Rabbi Meir dav kahani, only the ones you listed. Avol shtuk cholol lo pasol, but I disagree by shtuk cholol. The silence is not an admission. He doesn't care because it's not a psul that forbids him from entering the congregation, the community. Again, that's how you understand this brisa. The first one was saying if you have shtikus in all of them, then it's going to be a problem, even shtucholol. cholol, and then the response of Rabbi Meir is no, when it comes to the shtika by a cholol, that's not going to count, that's not going to be a problem. Again, mishum de lo echbas, because he doesn't care. And then we have the last version of Rabbi Meir. V'kamar le Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, l'tanakama de Rabbi Meir. And then Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar says to the first version of Rabbi Meir, responds as follows. If you heard that this is true, that Rabbi Meir says that it's kosher when the person is silent, lo dekaru lecholol v'shasik. I disagree with you. It's not the case. Rabbi Meir did not say it's kosher where you call the person a chol and he's silent. No, that actually would be more strict. Ela dekaru le mamzer v'shasik. The case where we're actually more lenient is where they call him a mamzer and he's silent. Why would a person be silent if it's not an admission? V'hai d'shasik savar mamzer kol islay. The reason why he's quiet is because he figures a mamzer, everyone knows about it. It's a widespread rumor. No one's going to believe that I'm a mamzer if there's no widespread rumor about it. Therefore, there's no need for me to respond. That's what the second version of Rabbi Meir is saying, is that actually shtika by mamzer is actually more lenient, and it's shtika by cholol that's problematic. Avol mamzer v'tzavach. But for example, if it's a mamzer and he protests, or cholol v'shosek, again, that's the case where in this version of Rabbi Meir, in the second version of Rabbi Meir, by cholol, if you respond with silence, so then possible, then it actually would be a disqualification. And why was he silent? And the reason why he was silent, because in the face of that accusation, because Savar Mistaya de lo mafki le mikol, he figured, look, I'll just take that. I'd rather be puzzled as a cholol where I'm not excluded from the community. Really, there's even more things wrong with me, but I'm going to be silent because that's not so bad, but it really is an admission of guilt. And Rashi over here explains, V'kamar le Rabbi Shimon l'tanakama lav l'tanakama debraisa kamar da'ira abonan here. Again, this is not a response. Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar is not responding to the tanakama of the braisa, to that first opinion. Ela l'tana shashona divrei Rabbi Meir b'beis hamedrash. He's responding to the first tana, the first version of Rabbi Meir. V'yamar b'shem Rabbi Meir shamati kol shein ba. In other words, you say one thing about Rabbi Meir, now I'm going to say the following. It really was the reverse. Ishmi aloch v'achi kamar. Here's what he was responding. Ezui almonas isa kol shenitma ba safek cholol sha'anu makirin es psulo. Sha'isa imo safek grusha. Again, if we understand, we know for sure that this is a safek cholol situation, that already we say it's okay. Avol shtuk cholol, but if he's silent in the face of a cholol accusation, v'yein anu makirin bo, and we don't really know anything about the guy, so pasal katanakama, then it would be pasal. Umiu b'ha polig Rabbi Meir tanakama, but in the following way, Rabbi Meir does argue with the tanakama. To you, kol psul d'shasik bei pasal, because tanakama held that anytime you have shtika, it's pasal. Well, Rabbi Meir cholol shasik with the pasal. Rabbi Meir says no, it's only the cholol shasik that's pasal. The savar mistay de lo mafki le mikol. He says I'd rather just be a cholol rather than some worse accusation, but really he is admitting to his guilt. If I'm going to argue, maybe they're going to find out real psulim that I have, even worse ones. And again, the idea is people don't recognize the chalolim among them. Avol shtuk mamzer kosher, but when it's a shtuk mamzer, we're actually more lenient. To hide the shasik savar hakol yodin she'eni mamzer. He's quiet because everybody knows I'm not a mamzer. He says the makir Yisrael mamzer and shebeneim, because Jews understand, they know who the mamzerim are among them. And the Gemara continues, Tani Chada, there's one brisa that teaches Rabbi Yossi Omer. Rabbi Yossi says, Shtuk Mamzer kosher, that when you have a case of Shtuk Mamzer, that's where we're lenient. And Shtuk Cholol Pasal, when you have a case of Shtuk Cholol, that's where we're more strict. That's where it's disqualified. But there's another brisa that says the opposite. Shtuk Cholol kosher, we're more lenient by Shtuk Cholol. There's no disqualification. Shtuk Mamzer Pasal, but by Shtuk Mamzer, it is a disqualification. And the Gemara says this is exactly the answer, like we just said. Lokash, it's not difficult. Ha Tanakama, I'll leave it to Rabbi Meir. In one case, we're talking about the first version of Rabbi Meir. Had Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, I'll leave it to Rabbi Meir, and the other is the second version Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar's version of Rabbi Meir, like we just said. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah. Amar Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi says, Maisa b'tinokas sheyorda lemalos mayim mino ayin. There was once a story of a young girl. She went down to the spring to fill up some water. V'nensa, and she was raped. Amar Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, and Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri said, Imrov anshe ho'ir masiyan lakun. If most of the people in that city, they're able to marry into kahuna, meaning they're not disqualified individuals. Harezu tinasi lakuna. So again, you can assume with the girl also, it was somebody who doesn't create a disqualification, and she is fine in terms of the kahuna. Rashi over here says, "Minayim and Amayin," again from the spring. Imrov ha'ir ksherin lahasi ben Hosein v'alman Hosein lekahuna she'ein ro b'nei ha'ir min ha'pos l'nisha lakuna. If the majority of the city are not people who would generally disqualify a woman for kahuna b'biyasan with their relations, avzu tinase, so too over here she can marry lekahuna. She is allowed to marry a kohen. And the Gemara says, Amar le Rava le Rav Nachman. So Rava said to Rav Nachman, Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri de Amar Keman. Who's Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri? Who's he following over here? Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri is saying if most of the people of the city can marry kahuna, so then she's okay. Who's he following? Ika Rabbi Gamliel. If he's following the opinion of Rabbi Gamliel, Afila Barov Psulin Nami Machshir. Remember, Rabbi Gamliel says we believe her. If she says she was with somebody who does not disqualify her, we believe her. Even if it's majority psulin, he says it's kosher. And Ika Rabbi Yoshua. And if it's following Rabbi Yoshua, Afila Barov Ksherim Nami Pasur. Rabbi Yoshua says Lomi Piyanu Chayin. And we don't. We assume that she's disqualified, even in a situation of Rov Ksherin. Rashi over here says, Diyamar Keman, the boy Rov Ksherin. Who does he hold like that he requires majority of the people to be kosher? Again, Afilu Barov Psulin Nami Machshir. According to Rabbi Gamliel, even if majority are puzzle, it's kosher. Dislei Hamid Ishal Cheskasa. Essentially, his position is that we say the woman keeps her presumption of being a kshera. And so therefore, again, the question is, who's Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri? Who does he follow that he makes this distinction between if you have Rov Ksherim or if you do not have Rov Ksherim? Amar Lei, so he responded to him, Hachi Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav. Here's what Rav Yehuda answers in the name of Rav. We'll take a look at Rashi over here. Amar Lei Hachi Amar Liolam Kreb Yoshua. The answer over here is going to be that really Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri follows Rabbi Yoshua and in general should be disqualified. But here there's actually going to be a case, we're going to establish the case as a double majority to say that she's not disqualified. Rav Yehuda, that follows Rav Yehuda. The Gemara will explain what's the difference if you have a double majority as opposed to a regular majority, and we'll continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Tesvav Amud Aleph.